pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll begin our Wednesday, March 14th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Here.
Commissioner Waddy,
Present.
and Chair Kent.
Here. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Waddy, first time. Thank you for joining the commission.
Thank you.
Commissioners and a party with real interest in pending commission decisions.
No, none for me.
Yeah, probably I do. When I was doing a field visit for, 1120 Garfield, I met a number of people from the neighborhood all saw me. The applicant, neighbor across the street, the neighbor next door, Ed Fields, who lives down the street, whatever. So they all talked to me about the project.
When I was there, it was a ghost town.
Yeah. No, I was the middle of the day on a weekday. I was surprised. Yeah, I didn't expect that. Okay.
Thank you. On the consent calendar today, we have, we have the minutes, and that's about it, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Any comments on the minutes from last meeting?
Nope. I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay, second on that?
Sure, I'll second that motion.
All in favor of approval of the consent calendar, say aye.
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 Motion has passed. Consent calendar has been approved. Moving into the discussion items for the day. First of all, I guess we start with public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address the commission on matters that aren't on the agenda? So this is for persons desiring to address the commission items that are not on the agenda. Please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take and/or discuss items that are brought up by the speaker. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment in a future agenda. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission? No. Thank you. So moving on to item 7, discussions and possible actions on matters related to the following items. First up, 7-1, planning application 18-015, design review for 2-level addition at 1120 Garfield Avenue. Could you do a report on that, Ann? Or Christopher?
I'll do a quick report. Good evening. Once again, this is planning application 18015, design review for a 2-level addition at 1120 Garfield Avenue. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 3,750 square foot lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 842 square foot home built in 1922. City records show the following work done to the property: a chimney repair, re-roof, repair, and replace of the front and side porches, remove and replace the perimeter foundation. Here is the street view of the property as it sits today. Project requests. The applicant is seeking design review approval for a 562 square foot addition at the ground level and a 400 square foot addition at the second level. On the ground floor addition, it is proposed to accommodate a laundry room, single bathroom, and a bedroom. And the second story addition is proposed to accommodate a new master suite with a walk-in closet and bathroom and deck. Here's an existing elevation of the property, and here's what's proposed. Contemporary design. The proposed 2-story addition is a contemporary design. The applicant is proposing a combination of a gable, shed, and flat roof forms for the new portions. The exterior of the addition is proposed to be clad in a combination of horizontal fiber cement siding with wood or painted fiber cement shingles. A projecting bay is proposed on the second story on the west side of the addition and is proposed to project approximately 9 inches from the main wall plane. A new deck is proposed on the southwest side of the home off the master suite with horizontal cables or metal guardrails. Painted fiberglass windows are proposed throughout the addition. Exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 floor area ratio are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Exceptional design treatments include horizontal fiber cement siding, shingle cladding, fiberglass windows throughout, varying roof types, exterior decks on the ground and the second story, and landscaping improvements. Parking. The applicant is proposing 2 off-street parking spaces in the existing driveway. Correspondences received. Staff has received several correspondences voicing concerns about privacy, the building height, and the overall design of the addition and its relationship to the neighborhood in general. The applicant has also submitted a letter to the commission after the agenda packet was released. The letter was forwarded to the commission by staff. In response to the neighbors' concerns, the applicant has drafted alternative project designs for a single-story addition which would require a parking exception from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Alternative project design. Upon reviewing the neighbor correspondences, the applicant met with the adjacent neighbors to discuss alternatives. A preferred alternative that was discussed involved a single-story addition, which would effectively achieve the same goals for the property owner's family. This alternative would require the commission to make findings for a parking exception to locate one of the off-street parking spaces into the front yard setback area. And here is a floor plan of the proposed single-story addition. As you can see, it'll help them achieve the additional bedrooms that they would want as well. And here's what would need to be granted by the commission is a parking exception. You can see the front property line towards the right of the graphic, and then that one single parking space, which would require the exception to be located in the front yard setback area. Parking, section 2028-0408, parking in required yards. The city recognizes the existence of residential properties whose historical development did not allow for present-day parking requirements. The city encourages off-street parking to be located in the rear yard or side yard. In some cases, the Planning and Zoning Commission, after due consideration, may find that permitting required parking in the front yard would be more in the public interest than would a reduction in the off-street parking requirement. The Planning and Zoning Commission may approve the front yard parking upon making at least at least the following findings as appropriate to the yard area in question. The first finding is A, parking within a dwelling, a garage, carport, or other structure in the rear or side yard is not feasible or will be disruptive to the landmark trees or severely restrict the private outdoor living space on site. Our finding is that providing 2 legal off-street parking spaces in the side yard would restrict the project design and would position majority of the addition on the east side of the property. A larger portion of the rear yard would be lost should the applicant provide legal off-street parking in the side yard area. Finding B states the area proposed for the parking in the front yard will meet the minimum standard of 7 feet, 6 inches wide by 16 in length. Our finding is that with the proposed single-story addition, the front yard can accommodate a parking space of 8.5 feet wide by 16 in length. These dimensions are equal or greater to the minimum standard of 7.6 by 16. Finding C, the parking space is designed so that no part of the vehicle will extend beyond the property line into the public right-of-way or will come within 1 foot of the back of the sidewalk, nor permit a parked vehicle to constitute a visual obstruction exceeding 3 feet in height within 25 feet of an intersection of any 2 street lines. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall not approve front yard parking space unless a finding is made that visual obstructions are not a significant safety hazard. Our finding is that the proposed front yard space is contained within the subject property lines. The public right-of-way / sidewalk extends approximately 11 feet from the front property line at 1120 Garfield and therefore does not render a visual obstruction when parked in the front yard setback area. And finding D, any required off-street parking spaces which are permitted in the front yard area are designed to minimize aesthetic and noise intrusion upon the adjacent property. Our finding is that the proposed front yard space is adjacent to the front entry staircase to the home and will be integrated into the overall site layout. The front of the home will be will partially block the view of the parked vehicle and will help mitigate aesthetic and noise intrusion. And this is an exhibit that the project architect submitted to staff, and this illustrates a possible reduction in height should the commission feel that a second-story addition is appropriate for this project. And you can see the hash lines which outline possible height reduction in the roof forms. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA. And recommendation, staff recommends that the commission provide feedback on the preliminary parking exception findings and determine if there is preliminary support for the exception. If there is support, staff will bring this back to the commission on March 28th, and a new notice detailing the revised request will be sent on Friday, March 16th. And that's it.
Any questions of staff?
Yes, I have several. So when you're describing the parking spaces that will be provided, you discussed the width of 8 feet 6. Is that the required minimum? Because I know that the 7'6" has to get adjusted when it's adjacent or on the side of the house. And so is that what the 8'6"?
Yeah, they meet the minimum width requirement.
Okay. And can you put the plan back up on the, since it's the only representation we have really of it? And so and then am I to understand correctly that basically the sidewalk runs directly at the edge of that front parking space?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I guess those are my initial questions.
Could you show the diagram that shows the
Okay,
parking?
the base of the second parking lot. Okay, I get it. Mhm. I see.
That one.
Okay, there you go.
I have a question. So on the existing site plan, is it correct that there are 2 existing spaces behind the setback? Sorry.
Yeah, correct, that's correct.
Okay, so this would be effectively removing one of the existing legal or required spaces. Okay.
Exactly. Mhm.
And that blue square is, what's the dimension of that? That's the illegal, that's the one that's not proper size, right?
They're both properly sized. The exception is to locate it within the front yard setback.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I thought it went over the property line. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be a little simpler, doesn't it? Okay.
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 That's all? Any more questions of staff?
No, I'm eager to hear the architect present the new design. Mhm.
Right, so would the architect like to say something about the new plans?
Did you want to go first?
I'd like to thank the city planners, planning staff, Ann and Christopher. They've been a great help over the last several months, and I really appreciate the planning staff, or the planning commission hearing us. My name is Hanson Wood. This is my wife, Leah Lander, and Sebastian. We moved to Albany about 2 and change years ago after renting and living in Oakland, and came here to set our to grow our family out of here. 1120 Garfield is a 2-1, 820 square foot home. It's really hard to make our current life work in that size, but we're trying to have more family members, and we have aging parents, and so the motivation for the addition is really coming from that perspective to plan and try and stay here for the future. We applied for 2 rooms and some additional storage for some basic things, like we don't have room for a washer and dryer right now. So the accommodations for both family planning and also just functionality, which we're not able to do some basic things in our house. I think we were maybe very surprised by the reactions from some of our neighbors, but we take it very seriously, and we want to be good stewards in the neighborhood, so we've really been working vigorously and seriously to address all those concerns as much as we can. It's a very narrow lot, and our house is awkwardly laid out, so we don't have really an option to go back through the house without tearing down a large portion of it, so we're constrained by both the lot size, the setbacks and also just the configuration of the house itself. Today we're presenting two options, and we really hope that you guys will go with the single-story option because we think that it really enables us to fulfill everything that we want while also making peace and harmony in the neighborhood and allowing us to stay in Albany. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll let Greg speak to the rest. Really appreciate your time.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Greg Van Mecklin. I'm the architect for the project at 1120 Garfield. And just to make one quick clarification on this slide, the parking space in blue is the full 8'6" by 18 feet, not even the 16-foot we put in the, and both spots are 8'6" by 18. But if you could go back one image quickly, and also if you could hand out the handouts, I think that would be helpful also. When we initially started on the design, the owners wanted to do a one-story house because they knew that 2 stories would be controversial, would have some detriment to the neighbors just because of the views and everything else. It is a fairly low-slung neighborhood. But we realized very early on that there was a problem with, an inherent problem with the house and the way the house was configured, and especially the way the existing bathroom and the kitchen were located. Normally when you have a narrow house, the old McGregors, they would put all of those things on one side so there could be a clean shot to the back of the house if it were ever to expand. But in this house, and I point better than I speak, but the kitchen kind of cuts across the whole width of the house, and the bathroom is oddly not located in the middle of the house, which is more often the case, but is all the way in the back and at the opposite corner to the front entry. So you almost have a Z-shaped circulation. It's a little bit unusual, I'll say, but it is the history. One of the problems then is that to not have to eliminate those expensive rooms. The owners didn't have the budget to replace a bathroom and replace a kitchen, the most expensive rooms in the house. We realized very early that the only place for development without doing that would be along the east side, which is where the parking is. And the piece of paper that I handed out, the single sheet with the pink hatching on it, you can see with the current parking standards, how little area is actually available for development. When you add the 15-foot setback and the 36 feet for the 2 parking spaces, that's 51 feet. That's more than half the depth of the house. Then you take away the rear setback, and we're left with 34 feet of length of developable area. That's really hard to squeeze anything into that. And that would, to get the 4 bedrooms and the bathrooms, would require us to move eastward into the rear yard and eat up very limited and very valuable private open space. So that was after we spoke with staff about the parking, and they said, no, you have to do the parking. At that point, they said we have to do the parking because my understanding is this kind of exception is a little unusual, and I'll leave that to you to know how often these are applied. But that forced us, in a sense, to the 2-story option. Otherwise, we would be eating all of their exterior space. And so in the second packet that I gave you, the 4-pager, the option that Christopher did not discuss was what we called option 3B. Now, I'll first say that the option as submitted, the original drawings as submitted, fully comply with the zoning requirements of Albany, at least as far as I know, and staff hasn't said that we violated anything. The building is 25 feet high. It's actually, I think it's going to be 24 feet too, but I've long ago learned to give myself a little bit of extra because construction, stupid structural engineers, whatever, always add a little bit. So I like to give myself a little bit of a safety net. So the actual building height as I projected would have been 24 feet 2 inches, well under the 28 feet that is mandatory. But again, the owners were surprised by the level of concern that the neighbors had expressed when they saw the story poles. And so they asked me if there was anything that we could do to help mitigate that and to bring those down. Option 3B was the first attempt at that. And what we did was we took the two-story portion of the house, and instead of having it all at the same level as the house is 3 feet above grade, which is pretty common to have the house 3 feet above grade. We dropped the two-story portion of the house to basically be at grade. We dropped it by 2 feet. The site slopes up just a little bit, so it might be 2 feet, 2 feet 3, 2 feet 4. The survey didn't go into that level of detail because it was basically a flat site. That brought down the roof height, obviously, by the same 2 feet. We met with the neighbor, Michael Green, who lives at 601 Keynes, the adjoining neighbor to the east, because obviously it's with him that we have the most impact. And actually, I was the architect for the addition that he did about 4 years ago or so. So I'm very sensitive to what would happen to my house, sorry. But we met with him, and we realized when talking with him that his concern was also about the privacy in his yard. He also has a very small yard, and he didn't want the windows from the upstairs bedroom facing into his yard. Originally, we had faced them west to get the better view and all of that. So option 3B not only drops the house, the two-story portion by 2 feet, but it also flips the bedroom around to face eastward, thus lowering the height even further, and you can see that on the last page. Then, after more discussions, I came up with the idea of, well, what if we could try to do a one-story addition here? And that's where we came up with option 4. And this is the challenge. Option 4 works beautifully. The neighbors like it, the owners like it, I like it. It fits beautifully, but it asks for the parking in the front yard the exception per the code section 28 point, et cetera, et cetera. So this would help reestablish peace in the neighborhood, I think. All the neighbors have said yes, they like this, but it does require the findings. I think staff makes a good point for the findings. We do know that trying to do this would, in one story, because of the unusual configuration of the house and because of how much of the yard is absorbed by the parking, we would have to lose the additional space in the backyard. All the other findings, B, C, and D, are very easy and obvious. If there's more screening wanted, we can certainly do some landscaping to provide that for the parking space on the west side of the parking. We'd be happy to do any kind of planting screening there. I don't think you allow fences there because that's the city right-of-way. And with that, I conclude my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the architect?
I have one. On your plans, I guess at least on option 4 and 3B, there's a little rectangular object drawn on the plan in the backyard. Can you tell me what that is?
Oh, they have one of those portable shed things.
Okay.
It's
It's already there, I think.
pardon?
It's there now, isn't it?
It's there now. It's one of those 4 foot by 6 foot 8 plastic tough sheds or something like that. I think that's the object you mean, on the east property line.
And
Yeah.
Is the floor level of option 4, that go down to a slab elevation?
Yeah, I should mention, what we'd like to do is, in the very back area, instead of going down, that would be the master bedroom, the very back bedroom. The owners are not wild about having their master bedroom at grade or very low to grade because the kids are going to be playing in the yard. They want a little sense of privacy. And the owners struggled immensely with the design between 3B, the 2-story option, and the 1-story option about which one they preferred because the 2-story option obviously provides more privacy for the master bedroom, a little bit away from the kids, away from the noise. So we're looking for a compromise of actually stepping up about 3 feet to the master bedroom. So the master bedroom and the closet would be about 5.5, 6 feet above grade. Again, the grade slopes a little bit. So those are steps actually going up, not down. That would allow them to have some privacy, their window height, the kids couldn't be staring into the, all the things. He's a dream right now, but someday he won't be as much of a dream.
All right. All right. So
Go ahead.
why don't you explain this drawing to us, the elevation drawing? I think you have a screen view of it, and so let's make sure we understand that.
Sure.
Okay, that one. Yeah.
So the actual elevation that's drawn is what is in your original package. That's what was submitted.
Right.
The first dark hatched line, which I'm going to, this line is option 3B. That's the option that's dropped it 2 feet, and it's also reversed it. So you can see that this point is 2 feet below the original ridge.
Right.
But the eave facing 601 Keynes is actually dropped 2 feet from the ridge, but 6 feet from the top of
From the
shed.
top, yeah.
Then the third option, that's option 3B. You don't get to see option 2.
Okay.
Sorry, that's ours.
Okay.
Option 4, there is a 1-story component to option 4, and then there is a portion of option 4 that is at the same level as the main house. And then there is this back area, and that would be the master suite that's raised to 3 feet.
Oh, okay.
That's the
Okay.
double line.
Okay. Okay. I see. Good. All right.
And just so I'm totally clear, is it the applicant's preference right now that we just focus on the preliminary findings for option 4, and we're not, I guess, is there still a scenario where you're putting forward option 3B, or?
Only if you can't make the findings for option 4.
Okay.
If you're fine with 4, we're fine with 4, and 3B goes away.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Great reservation due to the public's concerns.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone want to start the discussion?
Public comment.
Public
We have
comment, yes.
speaker cards.
So public comment, please call out the names and.
So the first 2 speakers are Michael Green and Eloisa Edery.
Hi, thank you for your service. I'm Michael Green. I live at 601 Keynes with my wife Melanie and my kids Juliet, who goes to Cornell Elementary and is right there, and Dylan, who is in 5th grade. She's in 3rd grade. I was under the impression that we were only going to be talking about the 1-story tonight, so I'd like to talk about that mostly. But I just want to quickly say that the 2-story is it is. I just want to see, did you guys see the pictures that I sent? I sent a 3.5-page letter. Great. It would have a very profound impact on our house. It's not in sync with the guidelines, the city's guidelines, because it's a zigzag, and it would have an impact on the neighborhood. It would be very unusual in our neighborhood. But what I want to talk about is that something really unusual happened in the last week, and that is that Hanson and Leah and folks in the neighborhood came together and in a process that was so focused on listening and understanding and respect for each other that there is an opportunity to do something that is kind of crazy, which is that you got 9 objections to the original 2-story proposal. And the proposal that they're bringing tonight, I suspect you're not going to get any objections, and you're going to get support, including from people who actually objected before, like me. And the reason that I think it's incredible and something to really sort of like cherish and honor and support is that the neighborhood ourselves came together and said, what's the best thing to do? And this could not have happened without really profound listening and awareness on Hanson and Leah's part. And I'll give an example. We had one of our meetings, we set the agenda that the first thing we were going to do in the meeting was we were going to each share our dreams for our homes so that we could intentionally come together from a perspective of we versus us versus you. And that set the tone for the kind of collaborative decision-making that led to the proposal that they're bringing you tonight. And it's literally the neighborhood coming together and saying, this is what's best for our neighborhood. So I'm really hoping you will support it. I realize that in order to support it, you're going to have to give them permission to have one of their 2 parking spots in the 15-foot setback, which is exactly what everybody else in the neighborhood's already doing. Granted, they haven't proposed a they're grandfathered in, but it will be really in sync with the neighborhood, and I really hope you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to ask
we
a
s-
question, but.
I don't know if my comments are relevant because I'm here to
Could you
address.
introduce your name before you
Oh,
start?
I'm sorry, Eloisa Edery. I live at 605 Keynes Avenue, where I've lived for 13 years. I was prepared to address the two-story design because I have spoken with Michael, but any meetings of the whole group, I was not aware of. So is it relevant to talk about okay. I would like to preface my remarks by pointing out that my neighbors at 1120 Garfield have not once spoken to me about their plans. I first became aware that something was going on when I observed the story poles in their backyard. The rear of my house and my backyard are directly adjacent to the backyard of 1120 Garfield, where this two-story monstrous addition would be built. This addition would destroy my view, affect my privacy, greatly reducing my quality of life. As a retired person, I do spend quality time at home where I do enjoy looking at the hills and where I enjoy privacy in my backyard. I do not know these neighbors who want to build this bulky and tall addition, although they're talking alternatives. As I said earlier, they did not consider speaking to me at all about this, even though it looks like this addition would not only be extremely close to my house, but due to its height, practically on top of my house and yard. I understand that the part of the addition that is closest to my house, there is a second-floor balcony, again, the original design. In that case, then that means they would be spending time outdoors right next to a bedroom window in my split-level house. I am here to ask that this not be permitted. It doesn't seem fair that they cannot even come and speak to me once and then be allowed to do this. I have seen plans, and I have seen the plans, and besides being unsightly, the addition doesn't even seem to be part of the existing house. Instead, it is built along my fence line and very close. I have lived here a long time and have seen other additions in the neighborhood, but they have always at least been made to look like one house. Due to the proposed height and location of the addition, this feels like someone is building an apartment building in their backyard right next to me. Additionally, how does this strange and obnoxious design show regard for and continuity with the character of our neighborhood? I want it noted as well that it wasn't until 2 days ago, presumably after they read posted feedback, that the applicants left a note in my mailbox inviting me to come to them. Not having been regarded in the first place, I consider this somewhat of an insult. But I do want to say I oppose the original design, and I support anything the Planning Commission and the city would do to make a more livable design possible.
Thank you.
I don't know.
That's good.
I have one more speaker card, Maria Meja.
And when you speak, can you move the microphone so it's pointed at your mouth so we can hear this?
Hi, my name is Maria Mejia, and I live in Albany for 33 years with my husband, Tony, and our kids are grown now. But our neighbors are Leah and Hanson Wood, and I want to support them in their addition to their home. Our neighbor presented to us a single-story design that is our preference. However, the single-story option requires the Planning Commission to approve a waiver for the 2 parking requirement that is in front as opposed to setback 15 feet. This is something we strongly support, to have a single-story home. If it was a 2-story, it would block my view to the hills, and I spend a lot of time in my backyard. And I appreciate them coming to me with the single-story family home, which I'd rather them go by it that way than this 2-story. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
What was your address again?
Oh, sorry, 1124 Garfield. I'm right next door to them.
Okay, yeah, I got you. Right, thank you. You wrote a letter, right?
Thank you.
Next speaker is Max Weintraub.
Hi, my name is Max Weintraub. Howdy. I live at 415 Cornell, and I walk past this every morning as I walk my daughter to Ocean View, and have a chance to have had the opportunity to see these houses on a number of occasions. I'm really pleased that there's been this opportunity for some of the folks in the neighborhood to come together and develop an approach that there's some consensus on and support of. The two-story design would have had significant impacts on the neighborhood, but the one-story design is one that does seem to be working well among the neighbors. The single-story option requires you all to approve a waiver to allow one of the two parking spaces to start in the front yard as opposed to a setback 15 feet, and that's something that I strongly support. I think that when you have this level of investment by the neighbors in a particular approach, that's something that should be respected. So I hope that you'll give it due consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cody Schrey? Am I saying that right? Schrey. Okay.
So many people say Schrey, it's okay at this point. I'm Cody Schrey, I live at 612 Canes, across the street from 1120. I'm here to say I have 3 children. They go to Albany schools, we've been there 11 years. The one-story plan with the parking mitigation is acceptable to me versus the two-story, which blocks our view of the hills. So yeah, I'm here to support the one-story plan and the neighborhood coming together on that, and that's my vote. Thank you.
Tony, what was your address again?
612 Canes.
612. So you're across.
Cross.
Kitty corner, kind of diagonally across.
Oh, yeah, Kane's got it. Right.
Diagonally on
Other
Kane.
side of the street, right.
Next speaker is Robert Noonan.
Hello, my name is Robert Noonan. I live at 609 Keynes, and I've lived there since 1984. And we've had 3 children. They've all grown and moved out now, so it's just my wife and I there. When I became aware of this design, I'm not directly impacted, but I wrote as a concerned neighbor because I have seen I saw the story poles up, and I know my friend Mike put a great expense to put solar panels on his roof, and this 2-story affair goes up and then blocks out the morning sun from his solar panels. And I could imagine what would happen with me. We are planning to put in solar panels. They will be up, and if our neighbors somewhere did something like that, we've had an advantage ourselves where our neighbor on Stanage Avenue had a very tall tree, 2 of them behind our house, and last year they were removed, and it was wonderful. We could see the hills to the east of us. We never saw them, for 30 years. And I can imagine that what's happened here with this 2-story option with what was customary would be gone, and there'd be a problem. I do like that option 4, though, the 1-story, and I do urge you to really consider that. I think that the change in the parking situation is going to be minor compared to the overall improvements if you do go with number 4 option. But thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Maureen Sandage.
Hi, my name is Maureen Sandage. I live at 529 Canes. My husband Steve and I have lived there for 30 years now. And I just wanted to come up to say I support the single-story option. I think the minor and waivers for the parking would be minimal compared to having this really large structure in our neighborhood. It doesn't impact me as far as views go, but I appreciate the issues that our other neighbors have, and I hope that you will consider the waiving the parking issues. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers?
More speaker cards.
Speak now. All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Anyone likes to start?
I guess I can start. Okay, I'm quite sure I can make the findings for the parking exception, and I like option 4 is what I've seen of it. I think it's the way to go. Let's see what to say. I'm really impressed with the neighbors. I'm really impressed with the people I talked to when I did my field work and ran into a number of the neighbors. Michael, I talked to. Leah, I talked to other neighbors, some of whom I see here and some I don't. And it was really clear that this is a real tight neighborhood. I'd like to live there. I was really impressed. I'm really pleased that the way that the greens and the woods could come together on this. I'm impressed with what I hear about the community meetings, and I know you put the architect to work really hard on this, and I think the end result is good. I do not have a problem with parking exception at all on this one. It's interesting that we have so many people from the audience coming to support a parking exception. It's often the other way around. Often the other way around. My only concern would have been if it would have been blocking the view coming around the corner. It won't. I'm quite clear of that. I think it works fine. I support it. Does it have to come back on the 28th?
Yeah, but depending on the direction tonight, I'd be inclined to put it on the consent calendar.
It would have to come back.
Yeah, we have to send a new notice.
Would have to be renoticed then?
It would have to be renoticed to reflect the parking exception request.
Okay.
Would there's still a design review component, isn't
Yes.
there, as
Yeah.
well? And we haven't seen the design, so it kind of.
Right, right.
That's true. We haven't seen the elevations, really.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Comments?
I can go. So, yeah, I echo a lot of what Commissioner Donaldson said, and one thing I appreciate in particular is that neighbors who feel like they have found a good compromise are actually willing to come forward and say that, because I think a lot of times it can be easier to say, no, I don't like option A, but it takes a little more effort to come forward and say, I do like option B, so I appreciate you taking the time out of your evenings to do that and submitting written comments, et cetera. I did just want to try to clarify something, because I think I saw a lot of written comments about nobody told us about this, and I was hoping staff could just take a minute to tell us what the sort of public noticing requirements are for a project like this, and whether the applicant followed those requirements.
Right, so we're bound by California Government Code Section 65090 to send written notice with a postmark 10 days in advance of the public hearing to property owners within 300 feet of the subject site. So we do that for all applications that come before you. We encourage applicants to reach out to their neighbors. We don't have any formal policy guiding that. It's just something that we advise as a good practice to avoid surprises and to make sure that neighbors understand what's being requested.
But there's no requirement. And,
There's no formal
okay.
requirement.
And then there's also the story polls that.
And the story polls also have to
neighbors
go
on
up 10
notice.
days in advance of the hearing.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I guess, I think, maybe lesson learned about best practices for working with neighbors, but it does sound like the applicant did everything that was required in terms of the outreach. And clearly there were some surprises in the process, so appreciate your willingness to consider those comments. And while I think that I could potentially, based on design, find a way to support the option 3B, I do share the view that I don't have any concerns based on the information we've heard in support of the findings to support the parking exception, if that's the preference. Yep, thanks.
Yeah, and I would similarly echo that of my fellow commissioners. I too think I can make the findings for the parking waiver. I do think option B is a better, more integrated architectural design, just at least based on massing. And I would have no concerns about it moving forward with option 4.
Could you put the findings up again on the board?
They're spread over 2 slides, so if there's one that you want us to zero in on, we'd certainly be happy to do so.
I just wanted to walk through these once more.
And I'll just say candidly, I think the key, when we looked at this, is actually on the next slide, which is the design to minimize aesthetic and noise intrusion upon adjacent properties. I think that's really the crux of the issue. The single-story design, even though it requires the parking exception, is the least intrusive to adjacent properties.
Okay.
If I may ask one clarifying question of staff, is the requirement that all of the findings must be made?
Yes.
Right, yeah, that's the problem. All of them. Could you go to the first 2 again?
Can I ask a question while you're reading?
Yeah, I can't, I don't have my glasses, I gotta read slowly.
You know, I like to ask questions about precedent, so I'm just curious if there are any other examples where we've granted parking exceptions in similar circumstances in recent times.
Yeah, this.
And again, I say this not because I think we can't make the findings. I'm just
Right.
curious if there are other examples.
You know, I would have to go back and look at our application logs in recent years. But I mean, this is a bit unorthodox. As Commissioner Donaldson pointed out, normally we hear the opposite of this, where neighbors want the rules, strictly followed, and they don't want exceptions. So this may put us into new territory.
It doesn't seem like the footprint changes the backyard at all. And on finding A, you note that a large portion of the rear yard would be lost should the applicant provide legal off-street parking. But the footprint doesn't change.
It would.
Does it? It goes forward, doesn't go backwards.
What?
It doesn't
think so?
impact the yard anymore, according to these diagrams.
If you'd like, I can address that.
Yeah, would you?
It's true that option 3B and option 4 have basically the same footprint, but remember, option 3B is 2 stories. So for them to achieve the 4-bedroom house, we would have to, I don't know how to put it crudely, smush that second story down into the first story, which means it would have to get wider to fit that all in.
But isn't 4B what you're trying to have us?
4, just 4, there's no B.
4, but isn't the 4 footprint looks exactly the same, or just a little bit?
No, the front
is further up.
The front has moved up 15 feet, and that 15 feet, which was the parking spaces, in option 3B, the parking spaces are
got
pushed 15 feet farther back.
Right, so if you didn't have that, then you'd be pushing back. Got it.
Right.
Nice, thank you, that helps, right. Okay.
You can have a seat, thank you. I think I would be receptive to the findings for the parking exception. So I'll say that on the first part. And then on the second part, I would actually, though, I'd like, if this does go forward and continue, and we do a full review of the design of a single story, I would like to ask the applicant to really consider like this alcove sort of play area, the strong possibility of reducing that so that you can create a buffer so that the parking spaces don't have to be directly adjacent to the sidewalk. It can be several feet, and if you need a little bit more space, you can expand on the mudroom to create space in your backyard here. But that would be one of my sort of strongest design recommendations right now. You'd still have your 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, and it would that way help to reduce the amount that the second parking space is in the front yard setback. Otherwise, I guess, sort of looking forward to seeing the full plans and elevations of the project.
So you want them
Design.
to improve the usability of the illegal spot?
Yeah, yeah, I want to make it less illegal. Actually, well, this is kind of, the discussion period has ended, but if the chair.
All right, sure, quick comment.
The front parking space does not go up to the actual sidewalk. It goes to the front property line, which is set back from the sidewalk. I think it's 2 feet.
4 feet. According to-
From the sidewalk to the property line is,
The plan
No, I
shows
can't-
4 feet. I looked at that. It says-
okay, it might be the full 4 feet. That's right, Kane's has that crazy extra width.
Yeah. I thought that Christopher
maybe you're-
said there was 11 feet between the, between the
Approximately.
property line and the curb line. Is
And
that
again,
right?
I think this is an issue that needs to be worked out in the plans
Yeah.
presented to us rather than us.
We're not
sort of
at the
design
sidewalk,
right
that's
now.
what I wanted to be
Yeah.
clear. The car would not be at the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Either way.
would suggest that, because we don't actually have this before us for a decision tonight, and we're trying to provide preliminary feedback, that you continue to work with staff to make sure you build out the findings, but hopefully from what you've heard tonight, you would have encouragement that if you bring that back, that the commission will be receptive to it, so.
I would just like to say, I think what happened here, these lots, these are very awkwardly sized lots and built out. Several of the houses of the people that were being impacted couldn't build the houses like they have now because of the setbacks and stuff. So they've gone way over what we allow now. And it's awkward position where somebody buys a house and they want to expand it. What's legally right, it fits with the code, municipal code, and they get a lot of objections from people because it impacts their house. And so it's a real negotiation in a town like Albany because we're kind of in between urban and suburban. We like our space, but we're very tight. And so every little move has an repercussion. So I'm really glad this seems like it's going to have a happy ending. It doesn't always, and it's really up to the owner of the house how he wants to go. If you're good with the ground floor plan, that's great for you and the community. It sounds really the way to go.
I am, and I appreciate the
We are recording this, though, so anything that's said should be said on
Yeah,
the
right.
microphone.
One last comment up here.
Thank you for hearing just one last comment and appeal, and I really appreciate keeping an open mind, and to all of our community members who have shown up and been willing to have this back and forth. We really like this. This is the road we started down when I actually went to purchase the house. I knew about the 2 parking setback, but I didn't realize it had to be set back 15 feet. So we've been fighting against that tide ever since we began the design process to get back here. I will note, though, that since we're going from the 2-story option and we're losing 300 square feet of what, compared to what we would have had in that alternative, so we are trying to preserve as much space as we currently have in this design to accommodate that, because as I said, we still don't have a laundry room, we still don't have just breathable space for my son to play. And so like that front area is really important to us to be able to have. Even everywhere is basically a walkway right now. The kitchen's a walkway, the dining area is a walkway. So I just want to make that comment and really appreciate the commissioners and staff really working with us this whole period. It's been a very positive yet, sausage making process.
Okay.
So thank you.
I'm just I feel like I have to sort of reply since I'm getting these comments to my comments. I will again strongly reiterate that I think the design can be refined and that alcove can be modified. I understand your concerns and your wants, but as some of the public have spoken, I live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condominium without a yard. I have a son older than yours, and we make do. And so to say a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with a full yard, living room, dining room, it doesn't quite read very strongly on my part. So again, I will advise you to sort of relook at that design and consider that strongly.
Okay, thank you. One last comment I want to make. Generally, it's a kind of a conflict between going out or going up, and everybody wants their views but nobody wants, we also don't want to eliminate all our yards. So in this case, you managed to do it. I think in the future, up is better than out, in my opinion, because it preserves yards and open space and all that. So, but that said, that's just a general comment. I think we're ready to call a vote. Somebody want to?
You actually don't have to take a vote.
There's no vote, is there?
No vote.
We're
Well,
going to
we-
send a
well,
new
we should
public
move to
hearing
continue.
notice.
I'll move to continue the item. Is that right? Yeah.
You don't even have to do
Don't
that.
have to do that, huh?
Because we're going to send a new public hearing notice.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't, okay. Mhm.
Okay. So I guess we'll,
Bring it back to us the
Look forward to
next
seeing
meeting.
you
You'll see this
again.
again in 2 weeks.
Okay,
yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the
Thank you, everyone.
coming out and
thank you. Mhm.
moving on the agenda. Everybody files out. We'll start.
I think I have to recuse myself on the next item because I own property within 500 feet of the site.
I similarly need to recuse myself as I am party to a trust that is within 500 feet of subject property.
Okay.
So,
See you in a little bit.
Elizabeth? Let's see. Got something to read or something?
I'd like to open 7.2, planning application 17-067, design review for a second-story addition at 721 Talbot Avenue. Christopher, would like to read the report.
Yes, this is, once again, design review for a second-story addition at 721 Talbot. Some background on the property. The subject site is a 5,000 square foot lot with an existing 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,295 square foot home built in 1910. The property also has a legal second unit, which was granted to the city in 1953. It was granted by the city in 1953. Code enforcement. The city records show that the subject property has had code enforcement issues since 1989 and has been vacant for over 10 years. In addition to the numerous building code violations, the property has an illegal third unit in the basement. The city has historically made repeated efforts to eliminate the illegal third unit without success. Code enforcement 2015 to present. In February of 2015, the city issued a notice and order to vacate and repair or demolish structures at 721 Talbot. The notice and order was contested at the Board of Appeals, and the Board of Appeals upheld the city's determination. The project was listed on the MLS in May of 2017 and later sold in a probate sale in August of 2017. New ownership. The current property owner purchased the subject site on August 4th, 2017 in a probate sale. Staff has worked with the homeowner to resolve outstanding code enforcement issues. Most recently, a permit was issued for the demolition of the existing accessory structure / garage in the rear. The structure presented hazardous conditions which have been mitigated. Project requests. The applicant is seeking design review for a second-story addition. The full project scope of 721 Talbot includes demolition of the existing 1,061 square foot garage and secondary unit have already been completed. Construction of a new 497 square foot secondary residential unit in the southeast corner of the lot. The secondary units are exempt from commission review, and this information is simply provided for informational purposes. Project scope also includes raising the existing building to accommodate legal ceiling height in the existing basement level, and remodel / configure the interior to create a new legal first story for the home. And also, the project scope includes shifting the entire home to the south, resulting in a 5'1" setback from the north property line to be compliant with site regulations. The proposed first level is to include 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a laundry room, kitchen, dining, and living room. The proposed second level is to be remodeled and reconfigured to accommodate 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a master suite with a deck. This will result in a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2,313 square foot home with a maximum height of 21.5 feet. Here's the street view of the property as it looks today. And here's a photo that shows the demolition of the rear structure, which has been complete. Recent review. The commission reviewed and discussed the project at the November 8th, 2017 meeting. continued to a date matter in the January 10th, 2018 meeting, and then continued to a project date of uncertain. The commission provided feedback to the applicant for design refinement. Those recommendations included refining the front facade, refining the exterior railing and materials, considering reducing the size of the second-story deck, revising windows to be proportionate with the wall massings, consider providing staff and the commission with color swatches to help understand the design. Here's an existing elevation of the home. And here's what was previously proposed, sorry. And this is what's proposed to you today. Project design refinement. As part of the refinement, the property owner hired a licensed architect to redesign the project. The new designer has carried the existing architectural style of the home over to the addition and remodel. Design modifications include a new defined porch entry with tapered columns at the front of the home, contrasting exterior cladding with horizontal wood paneling on the first floor and painted stucco on the second. The second-story area has been reduced from 1,295 square feet to 1,050 square feet. There has been a reduction of the second-story deck area and an inclusion of painted wood guardrails, and exterior lighting throughout the home on both stories, and white vinyl windows with white trim is also proposed throughout the home. Exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Exceptional design treatments include a combination of horizontal wood paneling, painted stucco siding, a second-story deck with horizontal wood guardrails, and a defined front entry porch, exterior lighting, and landscaping improvements. Parking. The existing single-car garage has been demolished and 2 legal off-street parking spaces are proposed to be located in the side yard, clear from the required front setback area. Per California Government Code Section 65852.2 D1, secondary residential units are exempt from parking requirements when located within a half mile of a transit stop. No correspondences have been received by staff. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA. Recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the attached findings and conditions of approval. And that's it.
Thank you. Would the architect like to come up and say a few words?
My name's Tom Biggs. I'm an architect. I live over in Oakland, and I just have to say, from the first project, what a nice town this is. People work together. And I love the neighborhood. It has some great character-defining features, and we had my involvement picked up from the last design, and the effort was to raise the house a little bit to get some space. My client has a very large Eritrean family. And so he's, and he has this house is in need of a lot of work to make it more functional, but it does have it built in 1910, I believe. It does have some intrinsic quality to the neighborhood. So we have the stucco, and we have the cripple wall that's going to be redone when the house is lifted. So we will to offset it, so we don't have a lot of stucco wall facade. I think that wood siding below water table trim would be very appropriate. And then I read through the minutes and recognizing the comment about that was one of them. An amount of wall, and so that was in response to it. The other was the railing or the amount of terrace at the back, and so I designed the terrace to be the roof to be held within from the exterior walls, so you'd have sloping roof on the outside of it, on the exterior portion of a little tiny railing to kind of occlude the kind of hide it a little bit, pull the railing in. So when you're standing at the exterior looking up, you don't see so much. You don't necessarily see it as much as if it were all the way. What was so the other design was, the other previous design had the rear unit, the 80 unit. There was, well, let me back up. The other design had some, there was some interior things that, circulation and functionality and the layout just didn't make sense. It had an entry point. It actually, the existing house is problematic in that it had actually 2 front doors, exterior-wise. I immediately wanted to rectify it. Looked to the city's guidelines to get a sense of what's really appropriate. And, we have this notion of the front porch element, so that's what that was driven by. And it corrected or improved the condition that was presented before, which had which didn't really make sense to me. It had the sort of an entry point on the other side of the property, farthest away from the driveway. So this design pulls it back towards the driveway, kind of providing more of a reason, kind of a better connection. Functionally, it works better too. So you have it enters into a foyer. You have the living level is on the lower, the main living kitchen level is on the lower floor. It has a clear path throughout, kitchen to the rear with doors that open onto a patio, and because the ADU unit is pulled to the southeast corner of the property, you have this nice little patio garden space that's kind of can serve actually as a dual serve. It serves both the ADU as well as the house, so it functionally just works way better. At any rate, so the effort's been to kind of provide just to put a cap on it, what I'm saying here, the effort's been to try to kind of bring this, address the setback issue and bring us something that's a better fit within the neighborhood. We're not asking for raising it, we're only going like 3 feet, I think. So, and it provides a real value for my client, and it fits in with the neighborhood and creates a value for the community in that respect. So anyway, so I guess I can't think of anything else to talk about. I appreciate your, input, and I'd be really ecstatic if we walked away with comments that we could roll into conditions of approval. We'll certainly welcome that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just clarify for me, the existing structure, it looks like it's basically like sunken below grade, like a foot or two, based on the section in the drawings, and then the new building is basically going to have a slab on grade at grade elevation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's about 2'3" below the grade, which slopes from rear to the front, and it's by making the grade, the slab sort of an average between the two, it would have a slightly raised slab. It'll also help with the plumbing as well, because I'm sure the plumbing, the slab, the main sewer is probably right below that slab, so it's going to be very difficult if we don't give a little room for slope, so we gravity drain.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, any questions of staff?
No, I don't. That was my only clarification.
I'll just say what I think I'm understanding about this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. So, I mean, it's described as a second-story addition, but the only addition is really bringing the sunken level up.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Making it code compliant and the lower level with proper ceiling height, and then the upstairs becomes the bedrooms and bathrooms.
Okay. Yeah, because I was when I first read the staff report, I didn't. It was like talking. I read it to mean there was an addition of you know, 1,200 or so square feet, but then it talks about the FAR decreasing, and so I was having a hard time
I think there's a
piecing that together, but
portion of the, is it the rear?
is it because,
Yeah.
Proposed to be demolished?
On the second,
yeah,
Yeah.
proposed second level, it's proposed to be smaller footprint-wise than what it is
right.
now.
But it's not a net addition of 1,200 square feet. It's just,
It's lifting the building that's there and making it legal.
okay.
So why are we, this doesn't, it's not over the counter because?
Oh, it's an increase in building height. It exceeds the size thresholds for staff level review. It's an increase beyond 400 square feet.
I mean, it's basically a whole new building. Let's let's be honest.
Okay. So, yeah, I remember seeing this a few times before, and I thought the second time we had approved it was, but maybe not, so, all right.
Did it come to us once or twice?
It came once before.
Once?
Yeah, and you gave pretty specific feedback to the previous designer who was involved regarding windows and building massing and a little more cohesive design.
Well, I like this design a lot more. Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously, the layout of the interior, I mean, looking at the existing layout and then new layout, it's totally night and day. It functions. And which is a few more extra feet, and we have twice as much square footage. It seems like the right thing to do. I don't really have many comments on it.
I mean, well, if you don't mind, I'll just start up. I do remember last time we saw this and the design. I will say this is night and day in terms of my appreciation of the design. I think the current architect has been rather responsive to our comments based on the previous design that was presented to us. I mean, I appreciate the sort of palette of materials that you've selected, the horizontal wood siding versus the stucco. I appreciate that you've sort of formalized that front entry. And I mean, in general, I think it's a modest design. But at the same time, I think its simplicity kind of does it a big positive service. So that's a good thing. I mean, in terms of the design, I'm basically okay with it. I think the trimmer on the windows is great. I guess the only thing I would say technically from an architect's perspective is I would maybe encourage you to kind of fatten up the water table between the two. Maybe even give it a dimension that kind of matches the eave, where the eave runs into the wall, to kind of play off of that or something. But beyond that, I think the design is great and modest. And so I have no problems approving it, and I would make that one sort of recommendation. Yeah, I think it's a good job.
Yeah, oh,
One thing. I did notice there was vinyl windows were called out. Wasn't our guidelines kind of pushing against the vinyl?
Yeah, vinyl windows are discouraged. They're not outright prohibited, but
Just the
they're
guideline.
discouraged. Do you know what product you're putting in terms of windows? If it's Milgard or another gelled win?
I'm going to say Anderson.
It's up for, it hasn't been nailed down, but, so we'll take whatever we can get. And I think, it's, it could be Milgard, or it could be a composite, window.
I mean, yeah, I would.
Marvin would be my ultimate choice,
Yeah, I mean, I think we strongly try to discourage vinyl windows. I think either just natural wood windows are appreciated, or a wood clad, like aluminum clad wood window. So you can get a sort of metal aesthetic at the exterior and a warm wood on the interior.
Some have used fiberglass windows, which actually.
Yeah, like, for example, Marvin Integrities we see quite often. They have the fiberglass exterior with the wood interior that integrate well into the older homes.
I guess I would want to clarify. I would say I would recommend, if we can price it out, but something on order of the aluminum-clad Milgard windows would be my recommendation.
Okay. That's nice.
yeah, I appreciate the applicant engaging a new designer. I appreciate your attention to the comments from before and agree. It seems like a simple design, but there's an elegance to it, and I don't have any real comments about the design. One just general comment I'll make is that I know for projects that are above a 0.45 FAR, we're supposed to make findings about exceptional design, not just, nice design, I guess. And I'm making this more as a general comment that has come up a few times, but I think that in the absence of real criteria about what that means, it's challenging for us to make those kinds of findings. And I would encourage, I don't know if this could be done at the staff level or if we need, some other kind of buy-in, but I would encourage the development of guidelines about what that really means. Or is it in the new guidelines that we just?
Yeah, we included, so I can read to you from,
that would be
the
great.
design guidelines. Projects which exceed a 0.45 floor area ratio are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Exceptional design includes, but is not limited to, high-quality exterior finishes, variation in exterior materials, variation in wall plane depths and projections, consistent window language, complementary landscaping, and consideration to off-street parking.
Okay.
So I think in the context of this review, they have used variation in exterior materials. They have the projecting bay on that, the upper level street face elevation. They've provided consistent window detailing on all 4 elevations. And I think this also came with a landscape plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And yeah, as I was talking, I was like, maybe we did just include this in the design guidelines. So appreciate that. Yeah, and I would also encourage staying away from the vinyl windows. If I don't know if it's appropriate to put that as a condition of approval, but other than that, I think I'm ready to vote to approve this project.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I'll make a motion to approve the project as presented with the additional condition that the windows be a wood-clad, to be manufactured, to be determined and worked out with staff at the staff level, and that you, at the very least, just sort of consider the design of the water table. Good, awesome. And so I'll let you just work that out with staff in terms of the final look of that water table, my motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion has, so planning, read this properly.
Oh, it's planning application.
Planning application 17067, design review for a second-story addition at 721 Talbot Avenue has passed.
14-day appeal period.
You have a 14-day appeal period?
Don't remove any story poles or anything like that until the 14-day appeal period is over.
Don't remove any story poles or anything like that? I'm still under training here.
Otherwise, your project's been approved.
Thank you.
I was just going to, thank you. Just sort of a side note before we get to the next one. I was going to say, I just sort of, from the 30,000-foot level, I kind of like that the exceptional design is a little loosey-goosey so that we don't get nailed into anything or having to require anything specific, so that we have a little leeway to kind of use our, personal opinions.
I hear you.
Because it's design, it's, yeah.
I think it's like a little
Well,
too discretionary.
That's the beauty of design, I mean, you can't, if you have specific requirements for design, then it's not really design anymore. It's,
Maybe we shouldn't have an exceptional category. I don't know.
yeah.
We should talk
I like it because we could,
sometime.
we're able to get rid of the vinyl. Well, they're still setting up. We're able to encourage the non-vinyl, which I think is an exceptional design move. I know San Francisco has a do-or-die prohibition on vinyl windows for renovation projects, so, yeah.
Yes, for visible facades, yes.
Yeah, public facades.
Next on the agenda was, waiting for Andy to get back.
bear with us a second. This
Okay,
computer
we'll wait.
needs to get logged in.
Could I say something before we move, Christopher, before we move on to the next agenda item? The next agenda item it deals with activities down in the Bulb, and I think the applicant is Love the Bulb Community Organization, Susan Moffett. So as president of the Albany Community Foundation and Eric's board member of the Albany Community Foundation, my initial reaction was, I can't deal with this because the Albany Community Foundation has given grants, small grants for activities down on the Bulb that Susan has applied for in the past. But I wasn't sure, so I emailed the Fair Political Practices Commission and asked for an opinion. And the answer came back this afternoon, a few hours ago, that because neither of us take a salary from the Albany Community Foundation, that's for sure. We don't have any personal gain from the Albany Community Foundation. There is no problem with us hearing this item and voting on it. We do not have a conflict.
Thank you for the clarification. Ready?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is Planning Application 18017, minor use permit to allow a series of temporary public performances on the Albany Bulb. Christopher, or Jeff, you're going to present.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Bond, the Community Development Director, and I want to thank Commissioner Donaldson for the diligence in checking with the FPPC. That's something that we always encourage, and we'd like to keep you out of trouble because it's you that get in trouble with the FPPC, not the city itself. So thank you for that diligence today, Doug. So this is something a little bit different from normal commission business, but it's an interesting opportunity for some exciting activities on our waterfront. The item before you is asking the commission to consider a minor use permit that would, in effect, allow a series of different types of performances, small performances in the public, city-owned public open space on the waterfront. In particular, what we're asking for is the commission to approve a conditional use permit that delegates to staff to work with Susan and her colleagues with Love the Bulb on a case-by-case basis, event-by-event basis, I should say, to schedule and organize events so that we're not coming back to you every month or two, and that they can have some ability to kind of schedule and logistically manage their program. First of all, the waterfront is a complicated place in a lot of different ways, and to start with is the ownership. On the screen is a map showing the different entities that own property. What we're talking about is the city-owned portion of the waterfront, which is essentially not exactly the Bulb, but in large part the Bulb portion of the waterfront, plus the theoretical extension of Buchanan Street, if it were to extend from where it terminates now. There's a turnaround. If it were to continue to extend straight out. The existing trails and access roads out there don't exactly follow that right away, but it's pretty close. The little bit of context for the waterfront, since it's not an area that you see a lot of applications for, as I mentioned, it's city-owned. It has a waterfront zoning designation. And that designation specifies particular uses that are allowed. It is, in addition to city regulations, both in the Planning and Zoning Code and in the general plan, it's subject to quite a bit of regulatory authority from other agencies. It's part of the East Shore State Park, so there's a state park approved general plan, different than our general plan. The Bay Conservation Development Commission has jurisdiction over this area, although we don't believe that anything about what's proposed here would be subject to their review. And then it is a landfill, and so the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the Alameda County Environmental Health also have regulatory authority over the fact that it's a landfill. For the other portions of the Bulb that aren't city-owned, it's a combination of state and park district, and there's an agreement between the park district and the state so that essentially you can think of what's not city-owned is managed by the East Bay Regional Park District. And we're going through a multi-year process to develop plans and then implement plans for the city-owned portion of the waterfront. We did a transition plan a couple of years ago, and we're in continued dialogue with the Park District about how to implement some of the ideas that are in the transition plan. In the meantime, to have an opportunity to get people out to the waterfront and to experience it, which is established as one of the policies in the general plan, this is a terrific opportunity to do that. The types of events, I'll let Susan describe those in more detail, but they're relatively small scale. It is a large area. I know that Susan's intending to do this in a way that people who are out enjoying the bulb in other ways, they will be able to continue to do that. So whether it's running or walking dogs or just kind of quiet contemplation of the bay shoreline, there will be plenty of opportunities to do that. And importantly, it doesn't involve any digging or construction or activities that would potentially trigger either a more careful review by us or other agencies. This is an image just to kind of give you a general idea of the network of trails and some of the areas that some of these events may be held at. And Susan can, again, kind of point to different areas that if you have questions about particularly where certain things might happen. We can bring this image back up again. And as I mentioned, this is consistent with our general plan. There's a policy about bringing greater public awareness to the Albany waterfront, and this is an opportunity to do that. We have some relatively short conditions of approval. What we're proposing initially is a 3-year term for this use permit. And if there are types of events where we feel like the commission might be interested, and you can give us feedback on this evening, but there are particular events where you might be interested, or if the scale of this gets to a size where this is really exciting and we're getting more people, we might want to bring back to you some of these events. We're not expecting that, but just we wanted to make sure everybody's aware that that's something we might want to do. To the degree that there are public art installations or activities that might involve or be of interest to the Arts Committee, we work closely, and I know Susan does too, with the Arts Committee, and we'll bring to their attention anything that we think that they'll be interested to know about. And then finally, basically to require these activities to comply with the standard conditions and requirements that are in the municipal code about what you can do in a park. So like any park, there are hours of operation, there are restrictions on alcohol and digging and building things. So those requirements would apply. We haven't received any correspondence regarding this application, and we're recommending the determination that it be categorically exempt from the requirements of CEQA, since it, in a sense, doesn't involve any expansion of use of the park as it is today. And then finally, I'll just leave this image up for you to use, or Susan to use. I think she also has some images that she can show you about some of the things they're talking about. Maybe before I sit down, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any now, or you could wait till after Susan's presentation if you prefer.
I have a question or two. Total mind fart. One question is this doesn't really relate to the project, so to speak, but is there any sort of tentative plans or future plans to have the Albany Beach become part of the East Bay Regional Park District, or is it going to be state-owned?
So that is, that's a different project, but it's relevant to some degree. That the beach project is in progress. Phase 1 has been completed. So if you go out there now, the new trail road access, it's a dirt road, that was phase 1 of the beach project. That was the East Bay Regional Park District did that. They are this year planning to construct phases 2 and 3, which include restoration of the beach area and construction of some dunes to try to kind of create a more ecological area there. And for bicyclists who've gone along the Bay Trail, it will kind of close the gap in the Bay Trail through the Golden Gate Fields property. So the Park District is acquiring through eminent domain some property. There'll be a trail right along the shoreline. And that should be constructed in 2018.
Okay.
And that's a Park District project. That's it's kind of folded into the state park. The lines between what's a state park and a regional park are kind of blurred in this case since both.
And then my other question was, what type of public notice was done for this project? Was any done?
We do our standard 300-foot public notice plus the 3 different places where we post, and then we also have a e-notify list that we've used for some of our past waterfront planning. And in addition, people can apply and or sign up for Planning and Zoning Commission e-notifies as well. So
One other thing to note, though, Jeff actually prepared a supplemental list of different public agencies who might take an interest in the project. So I think Bay Area Conservation got a notice, East Bay Regional Parks got a notice.
yes.
I'm probably forgetting some other agency in there, but there were about 6 other entities independent of the 300-foot mailer that were contacted.
The Citizens for East Shore State Park, I believe the Audubon Society. I don't know if there are other groups that have historically expressed an interest in it, but I know we took an effort to reach out to all of them.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
How did you notify people 300 feet away? There's nobody there.
Golden Gate Fields.
Golden Gate Fields.
There's only one, all right.
That's really the only other property owner. Yeah, it's a little, it's the same government code that you use for your other agenda items here tonight. It's just a little bit more awkward.
It just seems a little weird because it's a public park, so everybody uses it as opposed to a house where it just affects the people around it. All right.
Jeff, while you're up here, could you talk a little bit about parking? What's contemplated, because I think in the application that I read, there was a reference to using parking at Golden Gate Fields. And then in the staff report, I think it just said along Buchanan. And I'm just curious what kind of demand is anticipated for this type of use, and if the available public parking accommodates that.
It's a good question. So there are 2 different ways for people to park out there in reality. The first is along Buchanan, and on the screen you can see the right-of-way. Okay, good. Just to use this in point, there is along Buchanan Street. She's made kind of informally with Golden Gate Fields for special events where they've been very cooperative and letting her events, sometimes they'll open the gate to let people park. We can't officially count that or require that Golden Gate Fields do that. And I think if there was ever to be, we get to a point where there's a lot going on out here, parking is the first thing that's probably going to kind of become a problem. Or if there are events, more than one event going on, if it's the Kite Festival in Berkeley and something here on the same day, you're going to start to get stuff that's not going to be good.
And is that the kind of thing that staff would try to review and
exactly
plan for?
Exactly, and just to see how it works. I think it's the kind of thing where it's hard to anticipate exactly how it's going to work, and I think we just have to have a couple of events, see how it goes, see what the issues are, and then problem solve from there.
I had one other.
I'll add to that too. I think the plans for the beach improvements to add parking spaces.
Thank you.
Behind in the back of the beach that
yes, that's right.
The Park District is pursuing. They'll be adding some parking spaces there, which is the next, hopefully, pretty soon.
So yes, the beach project will include parking in this area. I forget exactly the number of spaces, and equally as important, new restrooms. So that will be, I think some of these events are going to occur before that project's completed, but within a year or so, those should be operational.
And I just had a quick follow-up question as well. Will this use permit preclude other future uses at the site if somebody were to come in and request a similar type of use permit?
No, not at all. I think we would be happy to work with other people who have ideas that are consistent with the vision that the city has for the waterfront. And we'd bring those back to you as well. This use permit would be just for the types of activities that Susan has described and her organization is doing.
One more quick question. Is there any desire to, to place a sort of a cap on the number of events? Or, I mean, is that something the staff considered and decided that it's not really necessary to put that kind of constraint on it?
At this point, that's correct. I don't think that, I think this is an all-volunteer effort, so there's maybe...
So there's a natural resource constraint?
Susan's very energetic, though, so we have to be careful.
That's right.
But I think, I mean, normally we try to anticipate issues. In this case, I think we want to give the benefit of the doubt to the project, to the activities moving forward, and we'll be a little bit more reactive. But I think if, with your approval of these conditions of approval, we can react to problems, and if it's a real big problem, we'll bring it back to you. Or if you, anytime you want us to bring it back to you, we could, of course. We didn't want to have to come back to you for every event. That's kind of what we're trying to avoid having to do. Okay. Want me to do it? Or?
Yeah, thanks. It's the one that has today's date on it. Yeah. And if it's presenter view, that's great, because then I have my notes in presenter view. Yeah, so I can see.
Well, it's going to display that presenter view on the screen too.
That's okay. It's okay if everybody sees the notes. Then, yeah, great. And how do I make it move forward?
Arrow key.
Can we reduce the note size on the bottom?
Just
Because it's blocking the slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Much better.
Okay. So, thank you for the opportunity to apply for this minor use permit. Over the past 15 months, Love the Bulb has presented 16 community events, including stewardship, environmental education, music, art, and participatory creative events at the Albany Bulb. These have attracted diverse new audiences to our waterfront. About half of our attendees typically are first-time visitors. We believe that arts are an essential way for helping people understand the natural environment and people's relationship to it. The Bulb is a wonderful research field station where, through participatory activities, people can understand the value of its diverse habitats and also think about what the exposed rubble tells us about patterns of waste, consumption, and city building. Our events provide an opportunity to educate the public about the history of environmental movements such as Save the Bay, as well as about the history of informal art in places such as the Emeryville Mudflats and other Bay Area creative movements. We have worked with diverse community partners, including the Albany High School choirs, who are pictured in this concert that they gave. They gave a wonderful strolling concert. We have also worked with El Cerrito Trail Trekkers, with the grassroots bicycle group Rich City Rides, based in Richmond. They bicycled down to do an art event with us from downtown Richmond. We have a number of collaborations with UC Berkeley, and this is the Albany Rotary Club helping out with the native plant event. Our recent native planting and cleanup event, co-sponsored with Friends of Albany Parks and Friends of Albany Hill, attracted more than 60 enthusiastic volunteers. We are grateful for the financial support of the Albany Community Foundation, Philanthropic Ventures Foundation, and the California Endowment for the Humanities. We're in the process of investigating additional funding from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, the Kenneth Rainin Foundation, and various creative placemaking funds that have the potential for bringing new funding for public arts to Albany. We hope to present additional community events that will bring together diverse audiences. In April and May, we plan to bring a Mexican folk music and dance group called Son de la Bahia, the renowned dancers Joe Orich and Sam Weber, and a We Players production of King Lear called Mother Lear. We Players is the group that presented a beautiful version of Shakespeare's The Tempest at the Bulb in 2006, which is pictured here. We have chosen partners who have successful, well-established relationships with local park districts. We Players has partnered with the National Park Service, the California State Parks, and the East Bay Regional Park District to present performances at Alcatraz Island, Angel Island, and Kennedy Grove, among other locations. Samavecia is a nonprofit that has produced large art and nature events for the East Bay Regional Park District. Oops. The art and culture of the Albany bulb were identified as a valuable resource in the Albany Neck and Bulb Transition Study, and we're happy to be contributing to protecting and enhancing these resources. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about this permit application. Thank you.
Questions?
Just some kind of general kind of questions. You referenced We Players, so that would be one of the performance groups that would be participating in the event?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I guess if I'm also just kind of curious if you could describe some of, I guess, what the actual performances might be, or if they would just be similar to what you've just sort of referred to, whether it be plays or whatever, maybe singing.
Right, yeah, so it might be music or dance or theater or participatory events where people make things out of the fennel stalks or rearrange the rocks. We encourage people to learn about the land by playing with it. So those are some of the kinds of things that we've been doing and hope to do more of.
Great, thank you.
How do you publicize your events and plan to publicize your events going forward?
We put up flyers at the bulletin board at the bulb, and we use Eventbrite, and we have an email list. Yeah. And Eventbrite is quite effective both in getting the word out to local Albany people and to people from around the Bay Area.
I have one more question. Sorry, I'm just wrapping my head around all this. So this would be, we're looking at approving conditions that would apply for multiple events that you would put on at various times and days and whatnot, not just a single sort of event, but the possibility of.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Great. That's my only questions.
These are all free events, or are they?
Most of them are free. The We Players will be ticketed, and so that people will be paying to attend that. And the Joe Orich Dance event will be a combination of ticketed pay and free attendance.
And how do you control that? Do you put a fence up, or you do?
So basically the shape of the space, so the We Players event that we are going to be doing, it's a very small two-person play. The Mother Lear is going to be kind of in a small nook at the bulb that is a little bit set aside. And so it's kind of natural that people who are not part of the group attending may pass by and get interested and peek in at the edge. And, you know, they're welcome to do that. But We Players has a lot of experience. All of their events are ticketed. And in the regional parks and the state parks and National Park Service parks, they kind of indicate, you know, whether the audience sometimes wears a sash, if it's a place where that needs to be more defined, or they're carrying a little kind of plaque thing, and it works pretty well.
I'm just trying to find flaws, but I don't. Trash. Is there? They don't look like things that generate a lot of trash, and it looks like the people that go are pretty conscientious about that. But I mean.
Yeah, well, the place is cleaner than when we came in usually. So basically, when we have had events where people might have brought snacks or something, we always make sure that we have a small trash container there and we kind of pack it out. So, yeah, we haven't had any problems with trash so far.
Any more questions?
I guess just one or two last questions. So I'm looking at attachment 5 from the staff presentation, and so it looks like you right now tentatively have 3 sort of major events and then maybe like 6 more additional events. And these would be, I'm assuming you would try to schedule these and disperse them throughout the year? Or would they be primarily in the summertime?
Yeah, well, right now we're conceiving of this as kind of a spring mini festival with these 3 events that I mentioned, and we're hoping to do something similar if we can pull it together in the fall. So it's kind of, there's, I think, value in kind of concentrating things in a weekend, and that's our general approach. Yeah.
Okay. And then one last question for you, Jeff, is beyond us approving these conditions of approval, would there be any other sort of individual review of the events that are to be done? Or this would basically be this is our catch-all review of this?
This would be the commission's opportunity. We can keep you informed if you'd like to know, just as part of your regular agenda announcements or something. We could just say upcoming time and date of an event and the nature of it, if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be great, just to, within the announcements, maybe like, this month, we have 2 events from the Love the Bulb planned. But, okay, great. Thank you.
And if you'd like to follow us on Facebook and get our announcements, you can get them that way. And we also have a mailing list at albanybulbinfo@gmail.com. So if you're interested in knowing about our events, we announce them publicly on Facebook and through our email list.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, just a couple more questions. So amplification for music, will there be electrical amplification?
No, these are all acoustic.
All acoustic, okay. So we're just abiding by the Parks and Recreation Open Space Municipal Code for Albany. You're working within those parameters.
Correct.
Thank you. That's it.
No more questions for me.
Thank you.
All right, well, any discussion?
Public hearing.
Oh, yeah. Anyone in the public want to speak? There's no public to speak. Discussion in-house.
I think it's wonderful. I'm really excited to hear that this is happening in the community. I do love the bulb, and it's just kind of weirdness, the combination of the natural beauty and the rubble and the art that's out there, and this sounds very complementary to the natural environment. And seems like a good way to really engage the public and bring people in. So yeah, I think this sounds like a great plan. I am, curious to hear how it goes with kind of parking issues and that kind of thing over time. And I think it would be helpful to get just very brief reports after each event, at least to staff. I don't mean directly to us, but if there was some kind of condition that just says, this is how many people attended, this is, flagging any concerns or things to improve for the next time. I think that would be helpful kind of tracking. And, hope that the organization will encourage people to come by bike and on foot, although I know it's a little tricky to get there from where everybody lives in Albany on the other side of the freeway. But yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea, and trust staff to work out the details.
And I think this is a great activation of public space. I actually haven't had the opportunity to get back to the bulb since I've moved back to Albany last summer, and I think this is a great opportunity to introduce more and more people to the space. So I'm looking forward to checking it out myself.
I go to the bulb frequently, and I do follow Love the Bulb on Facebook. And the last event I attended there was a couple of weeks ago, and it was a joint event with the Friends of Albany Parks and the Parks and Recreation Department, a cleanup day. Friends of Albany Hill were there, brought native plants, and we were replanting native plants there. That was the event with the Rotary Club, who brought in maybe 20 people or so, and we're working on cleanup and I think planting the plants. And the Albany Community Foundation provided pizza at the end for lunch, as we do for all of the park cleanup days. So that had probably 60 people or more there, some from all of those organizations and all of those mailing lists. The parking lot down at the end there that accessed the beach from on the Golden Gate Hills property was open. They opened the gate that day, so the overflow parking was in there, and it was provided just like that. Worked very slick. And city staff had a tent down there, and that's where everyone congregated for lunch. That's an example. That's my most recent experience with Love the Bulb and with a major activity down there. And that was multi-organizational sponsors. So, okay.
My two little comments is that, I concur with the commissioners, what they've said. I think the Albany bulb can be a very sort of hot topic, and its use of it can be very polarizing in our city, or has been in the past. But I think the uses that you're proposing, I think, fit along with the ideals of stewardship, good stewardship of our land. And there's no real impact, I think, in terms of a physical change to the bulb due to your activities, so I have no problem supporting the conditions for it.
I have no problem. Although I do realize that this code is really written for a manicured formal park, not the bulb. Some funny things here, like not being able to dig, which means you can't dig in the sand.
I know.
It's violated over and over again. So anyway, little comment. Would anyone want to make?
Sure, I'll move approval, I guess, of the staff report. I guess I'll move approval of a minor use permit to allow a series of temporary public performances on the Albany bulb from the Love the Bulb community organization.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion is approved.
Okay.
Motion, planning application 18017, minor use permit to allow a series of temporary public performances on the bulb has passed. There's no appeals. I guess there is a 14-day appeals, but there are no story poles to take down. In effect.
Okay.
Business.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like some of the conditions. I think one was no solar panels, which, depending on
Yeah, right. The
how
backpacks, there's some backpacks
exactly,
with solar
they
panels.
have
There's lots
built-in
of funny
solar
things.
panels and.
Okay.
Let's see, new business, none. Announcements, communication, discussion? None. Next meeting?
2 weeks from tonight, March 28th.
Okay.
Great. The meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.